Welcome to Let's Talk Games. My name is Dan and today we have a special video. Which I'm doing a feature on ranking the best PlayStation 4 exclusives of this generation. I get excited about lists. I know a lot of people don't like them. But for me, what I find really good about lists is it makes you think about one, games that you like playing, for one. But two, I feel like when you get to talk about ranking your games, it makes you really think about why do you like those games and what things do you like about some games that you don't like about others. And that's why when you watch the podcasts with myself and Jamie and Chunt, I always tend to bring up those little fluffy pieces because I just like to know what people think. And when you put like this game and this game together, it's like, what do I like about those games? How are they similar? How are they different? That's what gets me excited. And so I thought I would do one big video. I have no idea how long this video is going to be. Hopefully a regular podcast length. So I thought I would rank the games myself. I'm not going to do numbers. I think numbers are reductive. Descriptions and words are better for talking about games. So as you can see here on my on my screen, you will see I've got my own little ranking. So these names do not necessarily match up with your IGNs, the amazing, the great. They're close, they're similar, but I'll try and go through and explain what each of them mean to me. You'll also probably figure out as I talk about some of these games why they fit into that bracket. And most importantly, I love interacting with people, like whether it's on Twitter, whether it's in the YouTube comments, and just talking about games that people love. Like even if I don't like it, I want to hear about why you like it, and I can figure out something new. So to start with, Elite. Pretty understandable by everybody watching this clip. Elite is what I consider the PlayStation 4 exclusives to me. These are games that I just played and instantly I was like, this is top tier. This is giving me everything I want out of an experience. If there are negatives, they're minor. They might not be mine as other people, but for what I'm looking for in games, they're hitting all the marks. Next, we have worthwhile. So these are games which you would normally consider like great games. These are games where I feel it is a game that meant to be experienced. The negatives of the game might be more at the forefront, but you can easily look past them and experience these games for what they are, and it's still giving me the experience that I ultimately want. Next category, if you want to play it. If you want to play it, tends to be games where if you are looking forward to this game, or if you've heard things about it and you're like, that game interests me, but people have talked about it saying it's not that good. If this is a game that you were already looking forward to, or that you saw a flash of and you're like, that really interests me, if you play this game, you'll actually probably get some enjoyment out of it if you're looking forward to it already. That's what this is. If you want to play it, play it. Next, fun but can't suggest. There are games from this generation that I've played and I'm like, I'm so glad that I played that game, that experience. But this is more about, especially about recommendations. I can't say that this is a game that I would recommend to somebody to play. I'm glad I played it. I don't know if I can recommend it. Sometimes it might be, I just don't know who this is for, or there is still so many bugs in the game where I'm like, I can't recommend this game to somebody necessarily, but I'm still glad that I played them. The last one, and this is probably going to be where a lot of the games end up falling into, is I just could not do it. So this can either be games that I have played, but didn't finish or just stopped because there was something about the game that just wasn't clicking, and I tried and that was it. There are other games where I just simply did not play. Just couldn't do it, either because it just does not appeal to me or it is just not my type of game. So those are the categories. Feel like we should get started. Now, the way I'm going to start this, I'm going to go year by year just to kind of break it up, because if I do all the elite stuff, then people will just kind of fall off towards the end, and if I start at the boring stuff, people will fast through. So I figured let's go through year by year so you can click down and go to the game that you want me to listen to me talk about, or you can watch the whole thing. You do what you do. So let's start with the year 2013. 2013, the release of the PlayStation 4. Obviously it released in November. There was only a few games that came out in this year, so we'll quickly go through them. The first one, Killzone Shadowfall. I played this for a few hours in the end, and I was enjoying it. It was using good use of the D-pad, which was expected. A lot of the games closer to the start of the generation used the touchpad. That kind of fell away throughout this generation, and then right towards the end of the generation with like Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima, they started using it again, so it's been up and down with the touchpad. Because of Shadowfall, it was quite an interesting game. I did not finish it, but I feel like there's enough there, and that studio is always compared to like your Bungie's or your 343, you know, basically Halo. It's all, you've always had this exclusive thing, and Halo is obviously how good it was, especially at this time in 2013. I think it was just coming off Halo 4, which a lot of people really loved. I know Chunt and Jamie really loved that game. I liked that game. And this was always the franchise that just was not Halo for PlayStation. And that's unfortunate because it's a really well-made game. It has always looked fantastic. They tried something different with this, where you would essentially drop into an open world and go to these different spots to do these different missions in any order that you wanted. Like, they were doing some really cool stuff. And it was kind of the last first-person shooter that we got. But in saying that, I didn't finish it. But I still would recommend it to people if they were interested. So, in this case, I'm going to put it down to, if you want it, play it. At this time, it's probably a really cheap game to get into. Single player story. I don't think it's particularly long, so go ahead. Next game. From Studio Japan comes Knack. Knack. I played Knack this year, so it's strange going back and playing a game that was literally released within the first month of the PlayStation, now in 2020, after playing games such as The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima. Listen, Knack gets a lot of flack. And that was just a rhyme I could made up. I'm pretty clever that way. But Knack, it's not as bad as people say, but I was still pretty disappointed, even with that. Listen, the gameplay is pretty basic. There's not a lot of depth to it. Once you learn the basic mechanics, it just becomes this rotation of, you start the level small, you slowly get bigger, then you become huge, you smash guys, end of level, next level. And the game took me like 16 hours, I think it was, or something to beat. That's as long as The Last of Us Part 1 for me. Like that, it was a long game of not much changing. It's good that we have these family-friendly games, and there's a few more coming up in the coming years on this list. But I just have to put it in. I just could not do it. I could not. I would not. Next game, Resogun. Housemarque. This is interesting. I played a lot of this. What you'll learn out of this list, I like games for their gameplay. I love games for their story. So a lot of this will always fall upon, like, a good story is something that will make me love the game. Games like Resogun, I will always like. Housemarque are a really good developer. I think I've got another game of theirs coming up later on. And it's the same thing. The gameplay is awesome. It totally got me. I was going for high scores. I was creating my own ship, and it was such a good game to have, especially at the launch, as a free game on PlayStation Plus. I thought that was so cool. That kind of sold me on any game that Housemarque will make. But I feel like there is always going to be, for me, a certain limit. You can have the best gameplay, but to be honest, if there's not the story behind it, it's going to be hard for it to push into that upper echelon. But for this one, same as Killzone Shadowfall. It's, if you want it, play it. Like, if this is a game where, and you've heard great things, which you would have, if you've heard great things and it interested you just by like gameplay videos, go play it. You won't be disappointed. It's probably extremely cheap at this moment. You probably get it for sales for free. I'd absolutely get it. Now we move on to 2014. 2014, once again, this is a pretty limited year for the exclusives, and I think that's what people aren't getting coming up to this new gen. This first couple of years, it's not going to be much. Whether you're on Xbox, whether you're on PlayStation, there's not going to be much, and then they start kicking into gear. Same thing happened in the PlayStation 3 era. Once you started hitting 08, 09, like, they just start ramping up. But for now, 2014, Infamous Second Son. I really love the Infamous games. They've always just been great, and I think that's the thing with Sucker Punch. They always just make great games. You just go, yep, agreed. And they haven't always been top tier. But Infamous Second Son, I think that still has some of the best gameplay of a lot of the first party studio games. The story was a bit off. The main character, played by Troy Baker, Delsun Rowe, I think his name was, he just wasn't that interesting to me. I mean, a lot of people loved Cole from the first two games on the PlayStation 3. I liked Cole, but I didn't stand the absolute love for Cole that so many people had. But the gameplay was awesome. The different abilities that you had as you upgraded through the game, it was a little bit like a lot of games from probably before this, like PlayStation 3 era, where you get all your abilities just before the end, which kind of sucks. But the different powers that you could absorb and how you could use them were just awesome. I didn't play Infamous First Light, and I've kind of put that in here with this game because it is a DLC, so I've just thrown it in there, but I didn't play it anyway. So, in saying that, Infamous Second Son, listen, this is a great game. You will get so much enjoyment out of it. The story, while it's nothing special, it's fine. It'll get you through it. It'll at least keep you going to get from scene to scene. And I think it's worthwhile. So many properties these days are all based on your Marvel and your DC, and it's really cool to have a franchise like Infamous, where it's a totally original creation in its own world, and that's just something really cool to experience. Next we have Driveclub by Evolution Studios. I did not play this game. This studio is no more. After Driveclub, they released a DLC type pack, which you could also purchase on its own for the bikes. It had a horrible launch. This was meant to come out at the launch of the console. It didn't come out till October the following year in 2014. Like, it was horrible, and I feel sorry that studio fell through. I think the main mistake with this game being Driveclub is that they went from really fun games like MotorStorm back in the PlayStation 3 era to making this simulation type racer where you already have this dedicated studio in Polyphony Digital making Gran Turismo games. Like, even if you think, and Microsoft do this with theirs, right? They have Forza Motorsport and Forza, and they have one that is more your arcadey type, like you're driving around Australia or whatever country that they're particular in, and then you have your more sim focused one, and they do it as like every second year, like there's a new one. And as soon as they went to this Driveclub, I was so confused because of why are you putting out two different type of sim games? Like, you only need, for me, if I was ever going to get one, which I don't think I did this gen, I would only get one simulation type racer. I don't know why I jumped between two things, because there's only so much different when you're trying to make it simulation. Anyway, that is way too much time spent on Driveclub because I could just not do it. And let's move on to 2015. 2015. First game to release in 2015. This is a doozy. The Order 1886 by Ready at Dawn. A second party studio which made this exclusive for Sony. Listen, I understand a lot of backlash about this game. It had a lot of cool ideas that would normally appeal to someone like me. When you take some of those cinematic aspects from film to game, you realize there are things that just do not work about it. For instance, in The Order 1886, the aspect ratio, like the bars come down, right? Which is cool when you're watching a film. It's like, oh, it's getting in there, it's getting narrow. When you're playing gunplay and the camera's focused so tightly on your character, you need that world of view that you can look up and see that there are guys running across. You couldn't do that when you have the film bars on there. So you realize that everything feels cramped. You can't always see what is going on. The weapons are cool. The story is really good. Worst thing about this story is that they finish on this little cliffhanger like there's going to be a sequel. And up until this date, there is no sequel. Ready at Dawn had been bought by somebody else, and there's no way that we're going to get it from them. I think Sony still do own the IP, so they can do a sequel if they want. But I think they're onto bigger and better IP. If some of Sony's IP that we're going to talk about later didn't hit as well as it did, maybe they'll do a sequel to this game. But they can focus their resources into other stuff at this point. So listen, Ready at Dawn. This was a tough one. The question is, would I suggest this game to somebody? So right now, if you wanted to play it. Or is it fun, but you can't suggest it? I think if you were interested in this game, if you watched the trailers and you like the alternate history period, this type of period game, I feel like if you were interested in it, you should play it. I think there's obvious negatives about the game, but I think there's enough that could hold you over. One of the negatives about this game was that it was like 8 hours. I actually really liked that it was 8 hours. I feel like the story was at the perfect length. The problem is, because of the gameplay, if it was any longer, I would start to get real bored because the gameplay, once you understand the weapons and you get them pretty early on, there's not much more to it. So 8 hours was the perfect length for this game, and the story, and it encapsulated the story perfectly. But there's things that I don't think it's anywhere near being part of the worthwhile group that you're about to see. But I do think if there's something about this game that interested you, there's a reason for it, and that you should play it. A month later, we get Bloodborne. They released in March of 2015. Oh, Bloodborne. This gonna ruffle some feathers. I've tried to play Bloodborne 4 times. And when I say tried to play 4 times, means I downloaded it. I was actually given the disc by a friend as a birthday present because he loves these type of games. He loves Dark Souls. And he was like, play this. I put it on, downloaded it, played it for about, I want to say 2.5 hours the first time. And just could not do it. Uninstalled it. Forgot about it. I think it was probably a year later. Tried again. Got to about the same point. Couldn't do it. Tried a third time. I think I only played that for an hour. And I said, oh, this is just the reason why I just don't play these games. There was something else was happening at the time. Uninstalled, downloaded it. I downloaded it again about 4 weeks ago of recording this. And I just couldn't do it. I've tried so many times. I think the thing I like about action games that will always get me is the animations and how fluid it is. And I know a lot of people can argue with me on this, and that's fine. I get it. If you love that game, good, love that game. But I'm sorry, I just could not do it. I could not. That's going to probably annoy a lot of people, but listen, I tried. I gave it a good try, and let's just leave it at that, and everyone will be happy. Next game, Until Dawn. So for those new to Let's Talk Games, Jamie, Chun, and I, we used to have another channel which we moved away from, and on that channel I reviewed Until Dawn when it came out. And I hadn't listened to a lot of the reviews at the time when I did, and so I reviewed this game. I played this game. I enjoyed this game, but there was something about the story in it that for a game that was trying to invoke these like 80s movie, like slasher 80s 90s era movies, it did it very well. But there was parts of it that I really couldn't stand. Like so many of the characters, I didn't mind that they died, to be honest, because some of them were so annoying or so stereotypical, which part of the stereotype, it's really weird when people use archetype, stereotype, and they use one as a negative, one as a positive. But they were so stereotypical that it was more how they talked. It just infuriated me. What I loved about it was the butterfly effect. Like the butterfly effect, I think at that point I was like, this is better than any like Quantic Dream game or like Walking Dead, especially at that time. Like any of the Telltale games that were out at that point. This is doing so much. The fact that anyone could live and anyone could die. When I play these games, the worst thing you feel is that you start off here and you get all these different narrative choices, and then you come in at the end and it's just kind of the one thing. Like that's what a lot of people got angry about Mass Effect 3 about, right? Is that you're making all these choices and in the end it just came down to this one thing. This doesn't do that. This is like, we're going to tell the story, and there could be a character that dies here, but depending on who's there's going to be different conversations, and it's going to end. I thought that was very impressive. I will say though, this is another one skirting that line. Listen, I think it's fun, but I don't think I can suggest it, to be honest. I think there are certain things I couldn't get past. If you like these type of stories with the branching paths, I think there are better games out there that you would try before this one. Listen, it's really close to being something to recommend or not recommend. So I did have some fun during this game, but I just can't suggest it. That's where we fall on that. Next, 2016. This is when we start to ratcheting it up. And when I say ratcheting it up, I'm talking about Ratchet and Clank. Came out in April. Now, this game I only played this year as well. When I say as well as Knack. But Ratchet and Clank. This game's awesome. Like, this game, I've never for history, never played a Ratchet and Clank game in my life. I kind of avoided a lot of the those PS2, PS3 family-friendly mascot games like your Jack and Daxters or your Sly Coopers. But playing through this game, I was like, the writing is so good, the voice acting is hilarious. Like, some of the jokes that they put out there, I actually had a giggle to myself, and I don't normally laugh out loud with certain things, but this really hit it. And I just like that you just went from world to world, completing these tasks. You could go back if you wanted to go search for collectibles and things like that, but it was just such a really good game, to the point that with this Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart that's coming out on the PlayStation 5, I'm going to get it. Absolutely, because I'm happy to play through something like this again, and hopefully they can upgrade certain things and do different weapons, because there's so many weapons in this first game, where I thought if I get more of that in the sequel, absolutely. And what is the absolute winner on this, and hopefully they do this with next gen, we have, as of recording this, I don't know, the fact that this game came out at like a reduced price. I think in Australia, for Americans, it was like normal AAA game is 60 and it came out for 40. I think here, Australia, I could get it from, normally a game at JB is like $89 or $79. And when this launched, it launched at, say, 50? Between that 50 to 60 mark. And I got this as a free PlayStation Plus game ages and ages ago, and I just had never played it, and I'm so glad that I did. This game is worthwhile. This is absolutely a worthwhile game. Why is it not Elite? Because it's not. It is always harder for me to get into the more family-friendly games. The story, while fun and exciting, I like the deep stories, you know. It's probably a little bit snobbish, to be honest, but I had a really great game. If you were thinking about playing this game, it's absolutely worthwhile. If you weren't, and you were like me that didn't take it as seriously as you should, definitely worthwhile. Quite happy with that position there, alongside Infamous. Let's move along to Alienation. This will be quick. This is another game by Housemarque. Once again, gameplay is awesome. I did hit a bit of a spot during it where I'm like, this is actually getting probably too difficult for me, and I don't have enough concentration. But I had a really good time with it. Question is, where do I put it? Tough one. But I think looking at this list, yeah, I'll put it. If you want it, play it. I think this is going to be This is going to be something that is pretty sustainable with a Housemarque game. Like, if you want it, if something interests you about it, play it. You're not going to lose. Like, you're going to have a good time. You're not going to lose anything. Once again, gameplay is what makes it as good as it is, but the story is the thing that needs to pushed me into that worthwhile elite status. So Alienation, good game. Play it if you want it. Done. Next, Shadow of the Beast. I only included this game, Shadow of the Beast, because it has a special place in my heart. I think it must have been 2015. I went up to Sydney. It's where I met Jamie. I met Chunt. This is the game I played at the EB Expo, and I remember playing at an expo, and I was just killing it through that demo that they had for Shadow of the Beast. And I was actually really enjoying it, and even the guy there at the time was like, nobody got as far as you did in this game. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then when the release came out, there was actual changes, which was really cool to have like this little demo that I'd played the year before, and then seeing how the developer had like made changes to it. And it was a little bit slower, so it wasn't as good as it at the time. It was a nice experience, and it was pretty cool to see that come out, and there was something really cool about the tone and the visual look to it that I liked it, but I suggest that you play it. Don't think I can. Moving on to Uncharted 4. Oh my god, I love Uncharted. I love it so much. It's my favorite franchise of any game franchise. Excuse me if I feel a little bit worn down, because I just realized my audio had cut off, so I have to talk through Uncharted 4 again. But listen, Uncharted 4, there are moments in that game with like Elena where it slows down a bit, and the game is about 16 hours compared to the first 3 games, which were all about 12 hours each. And while initially I felt it was a little bit slower, now going back and playing it, I think I've played it 2 more times since. I just love being in that moment with Elena, and then with Sally, and then it's such a good send-off to the franchise. Like, I don't think I've ever played a game or watched a movie to end a franchise in terms of Nathan Drake's story, to end a franchise that way so well, and minor spoilers, but nobody dies. Like, the thing in movies and in games is where they try and tell you, oh, someone has to die for there to be stakes. Like Empire Strikes Back. You watch Empire Strikes Back. Nobody dies in that, but there are so many stakes involved, and with like Luke failing, etc., etc. There are stakes in Uncharted 4, and it's not about whether people die. It's about Drake and his relationship with Elena. Like, those are stakes. Like, and because you played 3 games with these characters before, you want them to be together, and they're at risk of losing that relationship. Having his long lost brother come back, sure, if you want to be cynical, you can say, it's contrived, and why wasn't he ever mentioned, blah blah blah. But they have like a real connection as brothers, and I really appeal to that. I got an older brother who is impulsive, and will just he'll impulsively go buy something which he doesn't need, and I'm more level-headed, and what's great in this story, watching Drake, because he used to be that way, and then he's changed since that, but Sam is stuck in that place Drake was in the first Uncharted, and it's so cool to see. That kind of shows his growth, but then it also related to me and my older brother being that way with each other, and it's just it was really cool. I love Nathan Drake. I normally have a bunch of Nathan Drake stuff in here and Uncharted stuff, so I love it. Listen, this game is elite. I understand there are going to be people like, there are other games on this list that will come later on, and you're like, well, that game plays better, and blah blah blah. It's true. I know where some people don't particularly like the gameplay. I think Chunt and Jamie are very much like that. But listen, there's so much this game gives me as the games that I want, and how good it looks. Like, it's still one of the best looking games on the console, and I don't think I could ever get talked about it. So some of it is bias, but it's elite, and I'm not apologizing for that. It feels good to say, you know. Uncharted 4 is elite. Pretty impressive. I'm moving on to Persona 5. I've never played a Persona game, and I did not play this one. I just couldn't do it. No one's been able to sell me on Persona. It's very interesting with games like this. A lot of people that say, hey, this game is like huge, it's 80 hours. I'm like, okay, that's not a selling point. I want to play different games, experience different things, and 80 hours is not going to help me do that. So what else you got? And they're like, the character's awesome, character's amazing. And I'm like, I need more. Why? Like, no one's been able to sell me on it. I might ask Jamie to try and sell me on it, because he likes the Persona games. But I feel like Jamie, the things that he likes about it might not be the things I like about it. So anyway, for now, just could not do it. Heard the game's amazing. That's great. I think on those, top 10 lists that people put out with PlayStation games, when Persona's normally up there, that's normally the only one I haven't played. So I'll have to live with that. I'll have a drink or something tonight to help me sleep through it, but I'm sure I'll be fine. So I'm splicing this part in after the fact because the audio went shoddy. So I'm going to talk about this again and then just put it in the middle. That's fine. So we're talking about The Last Guardian. The Last Guardian was a really interesting game for me. It's actually probably the reason why the list is structured like it is, or the rankings are structured as they are, for the sheer fact that this was a game, and I'll spoil it now, this was a game where I played through it. Controls were a little frustrating at times. I wasn't sure how far I could go before I wanted to close the game down, but I just kept pushing forward, and it had one of the most emotional, like, powerful endings that I've played. And I played it and I finished it. I talked to my mates about it. I was like, guys, this game, like, it was a really powerful endings, and they're like, oh, so it's good, right? And I'm like, it's okay. And that's why this is a game I would say is fun, but I can't recommend. Like, I don't know who to recommend the game to, and is it worth going through most of the game to get to that powerful ending? Because I'm truly glad that I've played this game and that I got to experience that and play through it, but I just don't know if I could recommend it to people. Anyway, so that's where I rank it. Let's move on to 2017. So 2016, there was such a jump from 2015 to 2016, and then I think 2017 is like, hey, 2016, we're going to keep up with you. Gravity Rush 2 in January. I heard really great things about this game. Clearly they brought this over because the Vita was getting wiped out. I think Tearaway was somewhere there, which I haven't got on my list of note. This game, once again, could just not do it. There are things about it which sort of appeal to me. The whole flying or moving gravity to make you fly, like, some of that sounds cool. But again, once again, I just need to get sold to me more about why I would like it. But no, just could not do it. Throw it in that bucket. Next game, Nioh. This kind of falls in the Bloodborne thing, and I'll talk about Nioh 1 and 2 here because it all relates the same. I didn't play these ones. It's amazing that Sony get this, like, exclusive from Team Ninja just out of nowhere. Particularly, I think it was the first Nioh where someone else was publishing it for a while, and then they just went, "No, we don't want to publish this anymore." And Sony jumped on it, published it, released it, and it has done very well. The fact that it got a sequel, and I think that sequel's done pretty well, and they're releasing content for it still, like, good on them. Now, Horizon Zero Dawn. I want to talk about this. You hear Jamie on our podcast. He speaks about this game as though it is a masterpiece. I do not think this game is a masterpiece. I think there are things that I would love to see improved. The biggest thing about this game is, one, and you hear me talk about it all the time, the fact that this studio, Guerrilla Games, went from making first-person shooters, Killzone. Shadowfall had like a little bit more color in it, but they were pretty grey and brown, which a lot of first-person shooters were in that PlayStation 3 era. But to go to this open, vibrant world with this awesome character and a story which was an action RPG, but it was telling you the story of Aloy, just like The Witcher tells the story of Geralt. Like, they are portraying this new character, and as soon as I saw that E3 trailer demo that they showed, I was like, an awesome, like, redhead chick with a bow and arrow with futuristic robot dinosaurs. Like, it was just the easiest thing to sell to me, like, so quickly. And then it's a toss-up, but this may have the best gameplay of any of the first-party exclusives. Like, it really might be. Wow. Yeah, I think it might. We'll talk about another game later on which might compete with it. But it just does everything. It does all that right. In terms of the sequel, like, you know, I want them to improve on some of the side quests. I think a lot of the side quests became pretty similar. I think the relationships with characters, like some of the side characters, just weren't all that interesting to me. To the fact that I almost can't remember any of them. But Aloy was so strong, and going through that game, playing as her, was so satisfying. I think the other game I loved about that game is like just going through the world, every combat sequence you would go into, you could get to stop and you kind of be able to suss out the situation and, alright, I'm going to go in here to do that first, do that, try and get them over there, put in a trap here, use my fire arrow on that good guy. Like, you would, there aren't that many stealth games around anymore. And while this isn't stealth, it takes in that idea of planning out your attack and then going in and just letting shit happen. Yeah, can't wait for the sequel. This game, it is elite. It is not a masterpiece. I really enjoy it. I think there are things that they can improve on. Which they could have. It doesn't just need next gen to be able to improve on them. There are things that they could have improved on in this version. Tops to Guerrilla, like, so impressed. Good on them. Really great game. I do think about this game quite a lot, so good on it. Moving on, and we are back in the Uncharted universe. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. This is an interesting one. Like the Ratchet and Clank thing being at a cheaper price, and I hope this changes going forward with people really thinking about how to sell these games. The fact that this game was this, I think it was $45 or $50 when it launched, and people are like, God, this is just DLC to Uncharted 4, blah blah. It's not. It is a full game. They clearly were using this as a testbed to try some of those more open world aspects, which we see later in Last of Us Part 2. But this is a full game. This goes into, if you want to talk about length, it's the same. It takes the same amount of time as Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 did, with the graphical. It doesn't improve that much on the graphics of Uncharted 4, but these are literally a full year apart. But Chloe was awesome as a protagonist. Nadine, she was good. Had a nice little plot twist towards the end. I won't spoil that quite, because I feel like not as many people have played this game as they should. But yeah, Yeah, I freaking loved Chloe in this game. It was so good to see her back because that was the one character I wish I saw in Uncharted 4, but the fact that she got her own game like this, awesome. Great story. I liked how it brought in her heritage and we learn more about it. The question is, where do I put it? You would assume, based on how I talked about Uncharted 4, that anything Uncharted is elite. This game is worthwhile, not elite. The open world area probably is not as fleshed out as I wanted it to be. Like, it felt like they didn't go all the way into it. Like you could have done more in the open world or just don't have the open world. But I definitely agree with the sentiment that once you get through that open world part, it then kind of turns back into an Uncharted game, is the best way to put it. But I don't want to be that negative about it because I think it's cool that they're trying something different. You don't want to try the same thing. I just spoke about this on our podcast this past week with the Call of Duty, Black Ops, Cold War stuff. Like they're putting in like, you know, character creators and stuff like that. I'm like, it is literally since Modern Warfare like 13 years and they're finally changing up the formula of what to do in that single player campaign. I'm glad that Lost Legacy tried something new, tried something different. Sure, it was running on the same build engine as Uncharted 4 was, but like they're giving you this awesome female character who you've seen before and is one of the favorites, and you get to play as her, and you get this open world map. You get to drive around in the Jeep and solve puzzles like you do in Uncharted. Like, it's worthwhile. It's not elite, but it's I would almost put it in elite, but I can't because it didn't quite hit me the same way as the regular Uncharted's do. Moving on to lost my place. Moving on to Knack 2. Guess what? Played the first game this year. Haven't played the second. Don't think I will. Could just not do it. Bye bye Knack 2. Well, let's get through a couple of these. October of 2017, Gran Turismo Sport. Probably gave it away when I talked about Nightclub. Haven't played any sim races this gen. I was into a lot of racing games in the PS3 era generation, like your Carbons and Need for Speed Carbon, and even the PS2 era with like Underground and stuff, and Gran Turismo 3. But no, just didn't get into racing games this gen. Maybe they'll change next gen. Who knows? People change. So do games. Moving on to 2018. We're beyond halfway through the generation now. And I heard so much about this game. Shadow of the Colossus. Everyone talks about how awesome this game was. I never played it on the PlayStation 2. I didn't play the remakes on the PlayStation, or the, let's say, remasters on the PlayStation 3. And everyone has talked about this game, blah, blah, blah. Once again, this cheaper price point for this remake of a game which everybody loves, I'll give it a go. I do know the type of games that I like to play, but I also know the type of games that I'm willing to try something new on. And there was enough there, I guess, in the Last Guardian style, where I was like, you know what, there's probably a game out there in the Last Guardian style which will appeal to me. This one just didn't, Last Guardian just didn't quite. So I played Shadow of the Colossus. Elite. Automatically in the elite category. I thought it was awesome. The simplicity of, you have your main spot and you go to different points on the map and you come back and you just keep going out and around, fighting a different type. It's basically a big puzzle, but a moving puzzle, and it was so good. Now the story I don't read into as much as a lot of people do, which I think there is stuff there to read into in terms of who you are, who this girl is that you're trying to save, why you're trying to save them, who are these Colossus. Like, I don't read that much into it, but I did like this feeling that, you know, you're taking down these awesome Colossus or Colossi, And at first you feel like this sense of accomplishment and power, and by the time you get to like number 7 or 8, you're like, all these Colossi are kind of just like existing in this world, and I'm just killing them, assumedly so this girl comes back to life, but I don't know, and something is happening to my character. Like, you start really second guessing, which is really advanced for when this game would have come out on the PlayStation 2. And I just thought, a lot of people complained about the controls on it. I didn't have that much issue, like no more than any other game with these sort of platforming elements, but the idea of being on these Colossi and taking them down, awesome experience. It is an elite game, but I totally agree with the sentiments around it, and yeah, just bloody play it. Then, in April of 2018, God of War. Wow, God of War. My history with the God of War franchise. I've played God of War 3. That was the first one I got from my brother. I heard all these awesome reviews. I think it was 2010 that God of War 3 came out. I heard all of these awesome reviews, and I was like, oh, do I want to play a game that's like the third in a franchise? Like, what if I don't get it? Whatnot. My brother ended up just buying it for me, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll play it. Turns out they pretty much wrap you up God of War 1 and 2 of what happened, and I started playing God of War 3, and on a cinematic level, Jesus, could not believe what I was playing. Just fighting these Greek gods. I love Greek mythology. I just like mythology in general. I like stories, and they're just these big bombastic stories, and to play through God of War and seeing all these different characters and killing them and seeing the world go to shit, it was so much fun. And that kind of put me into the thing of like, it doesn't matter if you come into a franchise after one, you know, they'll help me through it. I think that's what got me to play Mass Effect 2, which is now one of my favorite games of all time. So it was good for that. But I also understood when this game in 2018 was coming out, there'd been like 7 God of War games, and I've always been critical of like just shelling out the same game over and over again. And when they showed what this game was going to be, I'm like, God, I hope they pull this off, and they did, because this game is elite. The gameplay does fall back on your more Bloodborne, slower style combat, which did make me nervous initially. But because of the animation, because it is so fluid, because you learn these different abilities as you play with your axe and with other weapons. I don't want to spoil anything, but with other weapons that come in later on, and Atreus not being this useless side character just standing there. Like, the fact that it's essentially like the fact that all you have to do is press square, and that he does the thing that you've set him up to do. It's like if your character pulled out a bow and was shooting a bow, which would be fine, but it wouldn't be as exciting as knowing that Atreus is far over that side, and you're here doing that with the axe and throwing it, and being able to go over, punch a guy, seeing someone come up to you, call the axe back, get it, use one of your abilities, one of your runes on your axe, and doing this awesome power move. Like, everything is just working together, and it's not open world, so it's not going to take you forever, but there is this explorability in the game. They did such a good job. A lot of these studios at Sony step their game up and we're like, we need to make something special. We need to make something different. And I think that's what God of War does. That's what it is. And I don't know how they do. I don't know how they improve it on the whole one-shot camera. Like, I spoke to, I think it was my brother that was playing it. He didn't even notice. But it's not something that you need to notice. But the fact that it's there is cool and it's different. And I think the story was really well told. I think the first third, you feel like, where is this going? Like, I feel like we're almost there type thing. There is this change when you get to Mimir. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to take where this story goes. Yeah, that's what I'm excited about. And it's so personal. There's only a few characters in this like world that you are going over. So there's this sense of isolation, but that something has happened, or that something is coming, both at the same time. It's just really great game. It's elite. Throw it in the elite pile. We've got some good games happening now. Next, Detroit Become Human. This game. So this game, I've been trying to get my partner into playing more games, and she has a Switch now, so she's excited. Plays some Mario games. And I thought, Detroit would be such a good game that I could play with her, where I'll just use the controls and she can yell out the direction that she wants me to go. And so we did that for like the first couple of chapters. And then, you know, I had to keep asking, do you want to play Detroit? And she's like, nah, not tonight. And then it kept doing that until I basically gave up. And then it was like a year later. And I was like, can we just finish Detroit? And she's like, oh, have you not finished that game? You could have just played it. I'm like, God. So, I picked up where I left off. Listen, Detroit is heavy-handed. There's not a lot of subtlety to it. And I feel like with each of Quantic Dream's games, they keep becoming less subtle. But I will say, it may be my favourite Quantic Dream game. I think it might surpass Heavy Rain. I think there's things in Heavy Rain that don't age as well. And I know this was heavy-handed with a lot of the themes that they were talking about. Like, you know, the fact that, you know, the androids are sitting at the back of the bus and all that. But I like that it was trying to say something. I don't know how much it got across to people, but I liked it was talking about it. I like that he plays these three different characters and you were kind of molding them how you thought they would be. And the fact that after each little chapter it shows all the different ways you could have gone. When I play these types of games, normally I play it through once and I'm like, that is my story. That is not canonical. That is canon. That's what it is. And that was it. I was so happy with it. So, where do I rank it? Listen, it's worthwhile. Like, I honestly do think it's worthwhile playing, as opposed to like Until Dawn that I talked about before. Like, this then tops that. I don't think this game is necessary for everyone. And this kind of plays with my ranking system here. I don't know if there are certain people that I know I wouldn't recommend it to, but I still think, even if it's a not type of game, it is worth playing. And just seeing what this genre of game can do and how good it looks, it's worthwhile. It's definitely a worthwhile game. I was really happy with it. And then in that same year of 2018, so we've got, just going through 2018 right now, you look at it, we have Shadow of the Colossus, elite. God of War, elite. Detroit Become Human, worthwhile. And then we finish the year off with Spider-Man. Let's throw it up there now. This game is elite. Like, this is so much fun. I don't think with the gameplay, the swinging around this world, we've spoken about it heaps on Let's Talk Games on the podcast and also the spoiler room, so go watch that there. But just swinging around the city, doing random random missions is just so much fun. I think this is the game that competes with Horizon in terms of the best gameplay. Not necessarily the combat. Combat is awesome. It's like up there with the Arkham games for me. But just the traversal of going around the city is the best thing. And the story, I love that Marvel let Insomniac tell this different story. You know what? We're going to have Miles as a canon character in this, you know? There is no crossover. What happens at the end, I was like, they let them do that? And portraying these villains, like the main villain. I'm trying not to spoil so much of this game. But the main villain and the way that they explain why he's villainous and what he's aiming to do and how you can see that was going to be something good for humanity and it just went the wrong way. Spider-Man is great. I'm so excited for Spider-Man Miles Morales. Just to have a different version and then get a sequel to this game. The fact that you could have any suit that you want and then you can have any ability attached to that suit that you want, like giving you the freedom to just play as Spider-Man the way that you want to. Oh, so good. I feel like installing that game again and playing through it. I played all the DLC. I do not normally buy DLC. I'm happy with playing the story and getting through the story, and that's it. I got the DLC for this game because that means I just got to spend more time in this world. And the story was surprising. You can see the Uncharted, and this is probably why I like the story a bit. You can see the Uncharted influences in it, like the communication between Mary Jane and Peter Parker, like the little moments that they have where he gets changed in the kitchen and has to go back and get his clothes. And I was so impressed with Insomniac, and now that they're owned by Sony, I'm like, Jesus, they're just powerhouse. They're just a powerhouse. Insomniac, pretty good apparently. Who knew? Alright, that's 2018. Now we can, I guess Sony decided as well, like, let's take a little break, because this next year is going to be weird. 2019. In April. Days Gone. Days Gone. Listen, when I bought this game and I started playing it, I did not finish this game. I drove around for a little while, did a few missions, probably played 3-4 hours of it. When it was pitched as this open world Walking Dead cross Sons of Anarchy game, I was like, I don't mind The Walking Dead. I'm not as negative as a lot of people are on it. Sons of Anarchy has never really appealed to me. To me, a little too manly. I will put it that way. Let's ignore that. But I was like, listen, this is Sony Bend. They've gone from making like little Vita games and these little games, and Sony are giving them the opportunity to do something big and something new and different for them. And I wanted to support that. So I bought the game. I played the game. I do think there is a moment I could play it, but with those types of zombie-like games, I have to be in a particular mood, and I just haven't been able. It's not a type of mood that comes along very often, so it has to get me at the right time, and it just hasn't hit, and I gave it a go, but for now I just couldn't do it. So that's fine. The way a lot of these studios are going these days with live service games, I'm still going to put my money behind a game like this and say good luck. But yeah, I just couldn't do it. Hopefully this changes. Hopefully I do get to. There's a down moment and I get to play it and I actually really like it. But yeah, just couldn't do it. Next game, Death Stranding. What an interesting game. I have not finished this game. I have spent maybe 15 hours in this game, and I still have not left the first section. There is something extremely peaceful about walking through that world. Then is interrupted by the BTs, which then puts you into this different experience of like sneaking and stealth, which I like. But there is this jump from being like hearing the rain like on your clothes and on the ground and walking. Like there is something really peaceful about that, and then it gets interrupted by the BT stuff, and I still haven't reconciled those two things, because I would just like delivering stuff. Like I'm the guy that goes and plays Grand Theft Auto 3 for an hour and does 65 taxi deliveries, and then I uninstall the game because it's just fun driving the people around, you know? So there is something about it that I like. I haven't given up on it yet. I reinstalled it and kept playing it. Problem is with those type of games, like normally when I play 2K, I listen to a podcast while just playing the game mindlessly, but you can't quite do that with Death Stranding because there are visual and audio, those audio cues that still happen and that you kind of need to be in there. So I can't just listen to a podcast and go deliver stuff a lot, because you'll miss some key things that the game is trying to tell you. So in saying that, where do I put Death Stranding? Listen, I do have a lot of fun with the game, but it falls in that category of who is this game for? Like, I don't know. I don't know one person that I'd necessarily be like, yeah, go play this game. Yeah, I just don't think I can suggest it to somebody to go play. Quite strange. But like, there is a portion of this, like if I get in a mode and I'm playing this game is almost like a worthwhile game for me. Not elite, but like it's almost worthwhile. But then because when those things don't hit, suddenly I don't know if I can suggest it to someone. Like that's how much of a jump this game can be. Yeah, quite strange. Let's move on to this depressing year of 2020. We're nearing the end of this console generation, and this year started off with Dreams. Very highly reviewed, very loved by the people that play it. Okay, I installed it. I've played a little bit of it, and listen, I don't know if hypocritical is the right word. I've not played very much of this game, probably less than I have Days Gone, definitely less than Death Stranding. But straight up, I'm going to put this in fun but can't suggest. I know that if I get in that creative mood like I have to make this feature, if I get in that creative mood and I knew I had like a weekend free and just I could sit down and just create things or build things in Dreams, I would absolutely love it. I got it on sale and I don't mind just having it there, so I can always just go back to it. So I haven't put a lot of time into it. I can't suggest it because obviously it depends on the type of person that you are in terms of creatively. But I don't know, I'm having fun. It's not quite just couldn't do it, but it's yeah, there is fun. Can't suggest it. Let's move on. Predator Hunting Grounds, April. Not my type of game, obviously. Not a big fan of the Predator franchise either. I think I've seen the original Predator, and I've seen Predators, which I quite enjoyed. But so that property isn't something to get me into play this type of game. Obviously, by looking at the games that I have up there, I'm a very insular player. I tend to play the single player things. I like to be on my own. I like to be on my own to enjoy games and then go talk about it with other people. I don't necessarily like playing games with other people and then talking about those experiences. Like it's this weird thing. But yeah, Predator Hunting Grounds, not my type of game. Just could not do it. Pretty cool that Sony teamed up with Hillphonic to make that game after what happened with Friday the 13th and all the issues they had with licensing, etc. But the fact that they went out to this studio and said, we'll help you make your next game. Like, what do you want to make? And we'll give you the money, and that allows them to bring in like Arnold Schwarzenegger as like a playable character and stuff like that. Like, that's cool. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad it exists. I'm glad people are playing it. I'm glad people like it. Not quite for me. Just do it. Alright. Here we go. The Last of Us Part 2. The game is elite. Bang. We're done. This game, I am still thinking about it. It is now almost September. Game has been out 2 months. When I played the original Last of Us Part 2, I could not play any game for, I think it was 2 weeks. Like, I did not play a game because every game I played just could not compare. This was similar. I think this was about a week. But any game I play compared to this, like, I know there are so many people like even playing on PC and they're like, well, look at this game and how good it looks. I think there are different types of good looking games. But in terms of like character models and animation, you remember me talking before about how I love games that have like this animation. Like, this is a Naughty Dog thing obviously, but Last of Us Part 2 just has so many details in their animation and how this story makes you really, really think. And it did make me think for a long time. Still making me think. I don't know when I'm going to have the ability to play it again, but I keep going to YouTube and listening to everyone's opinion on it and listening to different thoughts and theories, and even just watching certain gameplay bits just to see how that moment in the game impacted decisions made later on. And it is a special game. These games do not get made, especially at this level of quality. There is a spoiler cast I was on with Alistair, a guy who actually Jamie and I all used to work with years and years ago, and he has this spoiler cast that we talked about, and I'll put the link in the description below, and you can go listen to my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2 there. But this game is absolutely elite. It's going to take a while for someone to make a stealth game that is as adaptable and creative as this game is, and freaking love it. And those characters. These characters are not necessarily good people, but what is this world that they live in? Is it full? Does it have good people? People have done stuff in their past, and revenge is not always the answer. And it's hard, but it's up to your decision to make. And then we have the Ghosts of Tsushima. Tsushima. I love saying that. Tsushima. Sucker Punch. They're back. Since 2014. 6 years. Ghost of Tsushima comes out. Special game, man. It's so special. The combat is so well thought out. And if you were watching someone play, you'd be like, how are they doing all this? Like, it's very confusing. And at stages, the combat going between certain things can be confusing. But man, when you're wielding that samurai sword and you have the music playing, it's just the repetitive nature of it is so satisfying. Could not ask for anything more. This was a really weird one, where I'm going to put it. So, for comparison, I spoke about Horizon earlier. This is almost on touch with Horizon. The weird thing about this, and I've been talking about this whole video, thing I love about this game is the gameplay and not the story. And I think that's why it falls into the worthwhile. For some reason, Ghosts and Horizon feel comparable. I feel like the side quests are more memorable in Ghost of Tsushima than Horizon. But the story is just not quite there. I know there's a few cuts in this video, but I keep thinking of Ghosts and I'm like, how do I describe Ghosts? And Ghost of Tsushima, I think I like the aspect of how they do side missions and upgrading your weapons and then speaking with these different characters and getting their story. I don't think I particularly loved all the side characters though. Like if those side characters hit with me a little bit more, the side quest would have been more impactful. The story itself is pretty bare bones, and it was very strange coming off The Last of Us Part 2 about making you think how revenge impacts on these characters and to think about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then you come into Ghost of Tsushima, which just says, no, this is about revenge. We need to get revenge. Like, you're along for the ride, right? You're along for the ride, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I am. But, I mean, I've been thinking about revenge for a little while now since playing The Last of Us. So it's a different mentality, I guess, going into it. But it's a beautiful game, and I said this on one of the podcasts, you know, people are like, this is the most beautiful game that I've seen. It depends on what you're trying to factor in. Like if you want to talk about like character models and stuff like that, you can look at The Last of Us Part 2. But in terms of art direction and how the world is impacted, this is a special game. Like using the wind mechanic just keeps you in that world. I tried to play in Japanese, but then I'm like, I'm too busy reading the subtitles. I just want to see everything that's happening on the screen right now. And just having these little side missions where you go get health increase, not by killing people, but by meditating, by going to the baths. It's a special game. I like it more than any of the Infamous games that they've made by far. I don't know where they go with this moving forward. If they do a sequel, like do we go to Japan and how are things different? I think historically, obviously this takes huge liberties with historical accuracy, but I do think there was a second Mongol invasion on that island at some point. But then are you just doing the same island, and how can you make it look different? And I don't know. It was a special game. It was a very worthwhile game to finish off this generation on. Lastly, what I will put in there is something which I can only really do for this generation going forward, because MLB The Show, I'm just going to put it down in the just could not do it. I'm actually kind of disappointed that I haven't. MLB The Show was a PlayStation Plus free game at one point, which I did get, but I haven't downloaded it. And I have played baseball games before. I think I played 2K back way when on the PlayStation 3. And it'd be cool to try it. I just haven't. And I might try it if these rumors about San Diego studio making Uncharted. I might go just test out MLB The Show just to try out the engine. But, you know, they make an awesome sports game, and that's awesome. Not much more to say, but that's going to be going to other consoles in the future, so I don't know if I can say this is a PlayStation 4 exclusive, because that will be going everywhere. Good on them. Shows you how much MLB want that game in people's hands, and they can continue the good work. So that's it. That's my list. That's all the games. Now, if there is a game there that you were waiting to see that you didn't, I can pretty much guarantee that is a game I've not played, and you can just put it in the just could not do it pile. Let me know if you've enjoyed this video. Please tell me where you would put these games on if you had this same ranking system. I don't want these 1 to 10s. I don't I don't want to see these good greats or whatever. Use my category system, and where would you put these games? If you like this list, let me know. I'm thinking of doing one for the whole of this generation, but probably after Cyberpunk and that have come out. But let me know if you like it. A lot of work went into it. I'm pretty proud of it. And yeah, just give me your thoughts. And thanks for watching. I know I repeat myself a lot of the time, but I'm really happy with this generation. I hope Sony can match it going into next gen, and I'm very excited to see how that goes. Anyway, my name is Dan. Tweet me at Clemo_24. I guarantee I will reply. Thanks very much for watching, and I'm out.